Drummer Boys by Penny Dowdy. The American Civil War. Many years ago, there was a war between the states in the United States. The states in the North and the states in the South fought against each other. This was the American Civil War. It began in 1861. The North and the South were very different places. In the South, many people owned farms. In the North, many people worked in factories. In the South, slaves did most of the work. But in the North, many people thought slavery was wrong. Because of problems between the North and the South, the states in the South decided to form their own country. This led to the Civil War. The people in the North fought for the Union Army. The people in the South fought for the Confederate Army. Children in the Civil War. Mostly just men fought in the Civil War, but children at home helped in other ways. When a father was away at war, his family had to do his work. Many children helped take care of the farms and homes. Some children went to work in factories to earn money for their families. Many children helped roll cloth bandages, which they would send to war hospitals. They also sent soldiers books, mittens, socks, and other needed items. Over 18. Both armies had rules on how old boys had to be to fight, but many young boys pretended to be older. One story says boys wrote the number 18 on a piece of paper. They put the paper in their shoes. An army officer would ask them, "Are you over 18?" The boys would answer yes, because their foot was over the number 18. Becoming a drummer boy. Men and boys who wanted to be part of the army would enlist or sign up to join it. Then the leaders would choose who would be their soldiers. The others could take different jobs. Boys were not supposed to be soldiers, but there were other ways they could help. Some boys were musicians. Some played the fife, which was like a flute. Other boys became drummers. The drummer boys had a very important job. Once they joined the army, the drummer boys were given gear. At the beginning of the war, they were each given a uniform. Later, when it became harder to find uniforms, the boys often brought their own clothes from home. The army gave them other supplies, such as blankets, clothes, and canteens to hold water. They would also give each drummer boy a tin cup, a fork, and other things to cook and eat with. The boys carried all these things in packs on their backs. Each drummer boy had to carry the pack along with his drum. After joining, the boys had to be trained. They learned to march and play their drums. It was important for them to learn to play a steady beat. The drummer boy's job. Drummer boys helped the soldiers throughout their long, hard days. The boys used drums to tell the men when to wake up, go to breakfast, and start working. Most soldiers had to walk everywhere. They marched for many miles. While they marched, the drummer boys played a steady beat on their drums. This helped the soldiers march together. A Civil War song. Have you ever heard the song, "When Johnny Comes Marching Home"? It was popular during the Civil War. It might have been played by a drummer boy to cheer the men up. The first part goes like this. "When Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah, hurrah. We'll give him a hearty welcome then, hurrah, hurrah." There were also many other jobs to do. The drummer boys helped the camp cooks. They ran errands. At night, some boys played songs to cheer the men up. The drummer boys were sometimes used during battles. It was hard for the soldiers to hear their leaders yell orders during a battle. But the soldiers could hear a loud drum. The drummer boys played special beats. These beats told the soldiers where to move and what to do. During the battles, many men would get hurt. Drummer boys would help carry the wounded men away from harm. They also would bring the wounded men water and help the doctors take care of them. Life in the Army. Being a drummer boy was important, but it was hard work. Drummer boys were far away from their family and friends. The drums were large and heavy. Many boys had trouble keeping their drums from dragging on the ground. Drummer boys worked very long days. It was hard work to carry a heavy pack and drum. They had to walk for many miles and sleep on the ground. The food in the army did not taste very good. Soldiers and drummer boys often ate salted meat and hardtack. Hardtack was made out of flour and water. It was so hard they had trouble chewing it. A big problem in the army was that there were few ways to keep clean. Because of this, many soldiers and drummer boys got sick. Although they worked hard, drummer boys did get a little free time. Some wrote letters home or played cards. Some even played baseball. Being a drummer boy. John Morgan was a drummer boy. He told about how hard the job was. He said, "It took all the grit a fellow had not to let the others know just how near a body came to collapsing." African American drummer boys. During the war, thousands of African American men and boys joined the Union Army. Some of these men and boys lived in the North and were free. Others were slaves who had run away from the South. Some African American boys became drummer boys. If a boy was a slave, he would have most likely worn old, ragged clothes. As a drummer boy, he would have worn a uniform. Johnny Clem. Johnny Clem was a famous drummer boy. He was in the Union Army. There are many stories about him. Some are true, and some may not be true. Johnny Clem joined a group of soldiers from Michigan when he was about 10. He worked as their drummer boy and earned about $13 a month. Some stories say that he was in a battle when a piece of cannon shell hit a tree trunk. Part of the shell bounced at him. It missed him, but it made a hole in his drum. Another story says that he fought Confederate soldiers in a battle. The stories of Johnny Clem show us how hard it was to be a drummer boy. And they show us how brave the drummer boys had to be.